On a quiet street called Willow Street, there was a small bookstore owned by an old man named Mr. Thompson. The bookstore was filled with ancient books, the scent of old paper, and a touch of mystery. But what made the place truly special was a cat named Shadow. Shadow was no ordinary cat. He had sleek black fur, piercing green eyes, and a strange ability to disappear and reappear whenever he wanted. People in the neighborhood often whispered about him, calling him a magic cat. One evening, a little girl named Lily visited the bookstore with her mother. She loved reading and was fascinated by Shadow. As she reached out to pet him, Shadow suddenly ran toward a dusty bookshelf and meowed loudly. Curious, Lily followed him and noticed an old book sticking out. She pulled it, and to her surprise, the bookshelf slowly moved, revealing a hidden door. Mr. Thompson chuckled. "Ah, Shadow has found another secret," he said. He pushed the door open, revealing a small hidden room filled with rare books and forgotten treasures. From that day on, Shadow became Lily's favorite mystery solver. She visited the bookstore often, hoping to uncover more secrets with the magical cat, and every time she arrived, Shadow would greet her with a knowing look, as if he was always one step ahead in the adventure. Some say Shadow was just a clever cat, but others believed he truly had magic. Either way, Willow Street would never be the same without its mysterious guardian. As weeks passed, Lily and Shadow became inseparable. Every time she visited the bookstore, Shadow would guide her to a new discovery, an old diary filled with hidden messages, a forgotten letter from centuries ago, or even a mysterious map drawn on the inside cover of an ancient book. One rainy afternoon, as Lily was reading near the fireplace, Shadow suddenly jumped onto a high shelf and knocked down a book. It landed with a soft thud at her feet. She picked it up and gasped. It was the oldest book she had ever seen, bound in dark leather with golden symbols on the cover. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened when he saw it. "I thought this book was lost long ago," he murmured. "It contains the story of a hidden treasure buried beneath this very street." Excited, Lily carefully opened the book. Inside, there were sketches of old buildings, notes in faded ink, and a riddle written in elegant handwriting. "The treasure lies where the moonlight touches the forgotten stone," she read aloud. Determined to solve the mystery, Lily and Shadow spent days searching for clues. One night, as the full moon rose, Shadow led her to a corner of the bookstore where an old stone tile stood out from the wooden floor. The moonlight from the window shone directly on it. Heart pounding, Lily pressed on the tile, and with a soft click, it shifted. Beneath it, they found a small wooden box locked with an intricate keyhole. Mr. Thompson, watching from nearby, smiled knowingly. "The final clue must be in the book," he said. Lily flipped through the pages and found a small iron key hidden between them. With trembling hands, she unlocked the box. Inside, they found a collection of letters, gold coins, and a journal written by the bookstore's very first owner, a man who had hidden his most precious memories away, waiting for someone to find them. From that night on, Lily knew that Shadow wasn't just a bookstore cat. He was a guardian of secrets, a keeper of mysteries, and most of all, a true friend. And though she never fully understood his magic, she knew one thing for sure. As long as Shadow was there, the adventure would never end. In the heart of an endless desert where golden dunes stretched as far as the eye could see, lived a young traveler named Omar. He had spent years exploring the vast wilderness, searching for a legendary hidden oasis said to grant wisdom and prosperity to those who found it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Omar stumbled upon an ancient map buried beneath the sand. The map led him to a forgotten path, marked by mysterious symbols. With renewed determination, he followed the trail, battling scorching heat, fierce sandstorms, and the whispers of the desert wind. Days turned into weeks, and just as his strength began to fade, he spotted something unusual in the distance, a glimmer of water reflecting the moonlight. His heart raced as he approached the oasis, surrounded by towering palm trees and blooming flowers. At the center of the oasis stood an elderly man draped in flowing robes. "You have traveled far, young seeker," the man said, "but the true treasure of the desert is not gold or jewels. It is the wisdom of patience, perseverance, and respect for nature." Omar realized that his journey had changed him. He had learned the desert's lessons. And with this newfound wisdom, he returned to his people, sharing stories of the desert's hidden magic. From that day on, he was no longer just a traveler. He was a storyteller, a guardian of the desert's secrets. Years passed, and Omar's stories spread across villages and cities, inspiring countless travelers to respect the desert and its mysteries. People gathered around him at night, listening to his tales of shifting sands, lost civilizations, and the whispers carried by the wind. One evening, a young girl named Layla approached Omar. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Is it true that the desert speaks to those who listen?" she asked. Omar smiled. "Yes, but only to those who open their hearts." Layla was determined to hear the desert's voice. With Omar's guidance, she embarked on her own journey, carrying nothing but a flask of water and the wisdom he had shared. She walked the dunes, feeling the grains of sand between her fingers, listening to the wind's gentle hum. One night, as she rested beneath the vast, starry sky, she heard it, a soft, ancient whisper. It spoke of forgotten travelers, hidden paths, and the eternal cycle of the desert. In that moment, she understood what Omar had meant. The desert was not just a place, it was a living, breathing entity filled with stories waiting to be told. When she returned, she shared her experience with Omar. He nodded, knowing that his journey had come full circle. The knowledge of the desert would live on through her and the generations to come. And so, the legend of the desert continued, passed from storyteller to storyteller, forever carried by the wind. Lena loved autumn more than any other season. She enjoyed the crisp air, the golden leaves that danced in the wind, and the way the world seemed to slow down. Every afternoon, she would walk through the forest near her home, listening to the rustling leaves beneath her feet. One day, as she wandered deeper into the woods, she noticed something strange. A single tree stood untouched by the season. Its leaves remained a deep green, unaffected by the golden transformation around it. Curious, Lena stepped closer and placed her hand on its rough bark. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered, "Why do you love autumn so much?" Startled, Lena looked around, but she saw no one. "Because it's peaceful," she answered. "The world turns golden, and the air smells like adventure." The voice sighed. "I wish I could change like the others, but I remain the same every year." Realizing the tree was speaking to her, Lena smiled. "Maybe that makes you special. While everything else fades, you remind us that change isn't the only beauty." For a moment, the wind stopped and the forest was silent. Then one golden leaf slowly fell from the tree. Lena watched it drift to the ground and whispered, "See, even the strongest can embrace change." From that day on, the tree continued to shed its leaves, one at a time in its own way, until it too stood bare, ready for winter's embrace. As winter approached, Lena continued to visit the tree every afternoon. Each time she noticed a new change. More leaves had fallen, and the branches looked lighter, freer. One day, as the first snowflakes began to fall, she placed her hand on the tree's bark once more. "How do you feel now?" she asked. The tree's whisper returned, softer than before. "I was afraid of change, but now I understand. Letting go isn't the end, it's the beginning of something new." Lena smiled. "Exactly, spring will come and you'll grow fresh green leaves again, but for now you can rest." As she stepped back, she saw a single bud, small but strong, forming on one of the branches. It was a promise of the future, of the seasons to come. Lena knew she would return in the spring just as she had every year. But this time she would look at the tree differently, not as something unchanging, but as something brave, willing to embrace the beauty of each season. With a final glance, she turned and walked home, her heart warm despite the cold wind. In a small, peaceful village surrounded by lush green forests, there lived a little sparrow named Pip. He was the youngest of his family and the most curious. While his siblings stayed close to the nest, Pip always dreamed of exploring the world beyond the trees. One morning, as the golden sun rose over the hills, Pip decided to venture further than ever before. He flapped his tiny wings and soared through the sky, feeling the wind rush past him. He admired the colorful flowers, the shimmering river, and the tall trees stretching toward the heavens. However, as he flew higher, dark clouds began to gather. A strong wind howled through the forest, pushing Pip off course. He struggled to fight against the storm, but the wind was too strong. It carried him far from his home, beyond the village, deep into an unfamiliar land. When the storm finally passed, Pip found himself alone in a strange place. The trees looked different, and he couldn't hear the familiar songs of his family. Fear crept into his heart. "How will I find my way home?" he wondered. Determined, Pip decided to ask for help. He met an old wise owl perched on a thick branch. "Excuse me, sir," Pip chirped. "I am lost. Do you know the way to Sparrow Hill?" The owl blinked slowly and nodded. "Follow the river, young one. It will lead you home." With new hope, Pip flew alongside the river, his tiny wings beating with determination. Along the way, he met kind birds who guided him further. A kind-hearted blue jay shared food with him, and a friendly robin offered encouragement. After a long journey, Pip finally recognized the tall oak tree where his family lived. He chirped with joy and quickly flew to the nest. His mother and siblings welcomed him with open wings, relieved and happy to have him back. From that day on, Pip still loved to explore, but he also learned the importance of knowing his way home. And every evening as the sun set, he would sing a song of gratitude for the friends who helped him find his way. After Pip's return, life in the forest seemed even more beautiful than before. He no longer took his home for granted and felt grateful for every sunrise, every rustling leaf, and every gentle breeze. But his adventure had also changed him. He had met birds from different places, each with their own stories, kindness, and wisdom. He realized that the world was vast, full of wonders and friendships waiting to be discovered. One day, Pip gathered his siblings and told them about his journey: the fierce storm, the wise owl, the helpful blue jay, and the encouraging robin. His brothers and sisters listened with wide eyes, amazed by his courage. "Will you take us on a small adventure, Pip?" His younger sister Lila chirped excitedly. Pip thought for a moment and then smiled. "Yes, but only if we stay together and follow the signs of home." And so the little sparrows began their own safe and careful adventures, flying short distances, meeting new friends, and always returning home before dusk. Pip had learned that exploring was wonderful, but having a place to return to made every journey even more special. And so the lost sparrow became the wise sparrow, leading his family with courage and love. As the seasons changed, Pip and his siblings grew stronger and wiser. They explored new parts of the forest, always staying together and learning from the birds they met. One crisp autumn morning, a group of migrating swallows passed through the village. They spoke of lands far beyond the river, where the trees were golden and the lakes sparkled under the warm sun. Pip listened in awe, his adventurous heart beating with excitement. "One day, I want to see those lands," he told his mother. She smiled and ruffled his feathers gently. "You will, Pip. But remember, no matter how far you go, home will always be here, waiting for you." Winter arrived and Pip stayed close to the nest, keeping warm with his family. He told stories of his adventure to younger sparrows, inspiring them to be brave but also wise. By spring, Pip had grown into a strong, confident bird. When the migrating swallows returned, he knew it was time. With a final chirp of farewell, Pip spread his wings and soared into the sky, ready for a new adventure, one that would take him beyond the trees, beyond the river, to the lands he had only dreamed of. But no matter how far he flew, he carried the lessons of home in his heart. And so Pip's story was only just beginning. Ethan was an adventurer who loved exploring the unknown. One day he set off on a journey through the vast Sahara Desert, determined to uncover its hidden secrets. With a backpack filled with supplies and a map in hand, he felt confident that he could conquer the endless sea of golden dunes. For the first 2 days, everything went as planned. The sun blazed down on him, but he managed to find shade under the occasional acacia tree. At night, the desert turned cold and he wrapped himself in a thick blanket, gazing at the stars above. On the 3rd day, however, a sudden sandstorm struck. The wind howled like a wild beast, and grains of sand stung his skin. Ethan quickly covered his face with a scarf, but the storm lasted for hours. When it finally ended, he realized his map had been blown away and his footprints had disappeared. He was lost. Panic threatened to take over, but Ethan forced himself to stay calm. He remembered a survival tip: always follow the direction of the sun during the day and the North Star at night. He walked for hours, hoping to find a sign of civilization. His water supply was running low, and exhaustion weighed on him like a heavy burden. Just when he thought he could go no further, he saw something in the distance, a small oasis with palm trees and a shimmering pool of water. Summoning his last strength, he rushed toward it, fearing it was just a mirage. But as he drew closer, he heard the sound of birds and the rustling of leaves. It was real. Ethan drank eagerly from the cool water and rested under the shade of the trees. As he regained his strength, he noticed footprints leading away from the oasis. Following them, he soon found a group of desert nomads who welcomed him warmly and guided him back to safety. From that day on, Ethan never underestimated the power of the desert. He had entered seeking adventure, but left with a deep respect for the land and the people who called it home. As Ethan sat with the desert nomads around a small fire, they shared stories of the desert, tales of lost cities buried beneath the sands, ancient travelers who had wandered too far, and the hidden wisdom passed down through generations. He listened intently, realizing that the desert was more than just an endless wasteland. It was alive with history, mystery, and resilience. One of the elders, a man named Omar, handed Ethan a cup of warm tea made from desert herbs. "The desert does not forgive carelessness," Omar said, his eyes wise and knowing, "but it also rewards those who respect it." Ethan nodded, understanding the lesson he had learned the hard way. He spent a few days with the nomads learning their ways. How to navigate by the stars, how to find water hidden beneath the sand, and how to survive the harshest conditions. When it was time to leave, the nomads guided him to the nearest town, where he could rest and prepare for his journey home. As he looked back at the vast dunes, he felt a sense of gratitude. The desert had tested him, nearly broken him, but it had also taught him patience, humility, and respect. Ethan knew he would return one day, not as a reckless adventurer, but as a traveler who truly understood the spirit of the desert. High above the world, where the air is thin and the wind howls like a distant whisper, stand the mountains, silent guardians of time. Their peaks touch the sky, their valleys cradle the rivers, and their slopes tell stories older than humanity itself. In a remote village nestled between towering mountains, a young boy named Elias grew up listening to the legends of the peaks. The elders spoke of spirits that lived within the stone, watching over the land and protecting those who respected nature. Elias, filled with curiosity, often climbed the lower slopes, dreaming of the day he would reach the summit. One day, a fierce storm struck the village, causing landslides and blocking the river that provided water to the people. The villagers feared they would not survive if the water did not return. Remembering the old stories, Elias decided to climb the highest peak, believing that the spirits of the mountains might offer guidance. With determination in his heart, he embarked on his journey. The climb was treacherous. Icy winds cut through his clothes and loose rocks threatened to pull him down. But he pressed on, driven by hope. After hours of struggle, he reached a hidden plateau where he saw something incredible, an ancient stone carved with strange symbols. As he traced his fingers over the markings, the ground trembled slightly, and far below, the blocked river broke free, rushing back toward the village. Elias returned home to find the villagers rejoicing. They saw him not as a mere boy, but as someone who had earned the mountain's trust. From that day on, he was known as the guardian of the peaks, the one who listened to the whispers of the silent giants and understood their wisdom. And so the mountains remained, watching, waiting, and standing strong, just as they had for millennia. Years passed, and Elias grew into a wise man, known far beyond his village. Travelers sought his guidance. Climbers asked for his wisdom, and the villagers always turned to him in times of need. Yet he never forgot the lessons the mountains had taught him, the power of patience, the importance of respect, and the deep connection between nature and humanity. One cold winter, a group of explorers arrived in the village. They were wealthy men from distant lands, eager to conquer the highest peaks and claim them as their own. They laughed at the villagers' stories, dismissing the idea that the mountains were alive or that they should be treated with reverence. Elias warned them, "The mountains do not bow to man's pride. If you climb without respect, they will test your spirit." Ignoring his words, the explorers set off, determined to reach the summit faster than anyone before. For days they climbed, but the mountains seemed to fight against them. Sudden blizzards covered their paths, avalanches threatened their camp, and an eerie silence filled the air. Slowly fear crept into their hearts. Then, on the fourth night, as they rested in a narrow pass, a deep rumble echoed through the valley. The ground shook and the wind howled louder than ever. The explorers realized their mistake. They had challenged forces far greater than themselves. Desperate and afraid, they made their way back down, struggling against the storm. When they returned to the village, humbled and exhausted, Elias welcomed them without judgment. "You have seen the truth," he said. "The mountains are not to be conquered. They are to be honored." From that day on, the explorers became storytellers, sharing their experience with others. And as for Elias, he remained in his village, watching over the mountains, knowing that some lessons must be learned the hard way. The mountains, silent as ever, continued their eternal vigil, standing strong as the guardians of time. Lena had always dreamed of visiting Paris. She had spent years admiring photos of the Eiffel Tower, the sparkling Seine River, and the narrow streets lined with charming cafes. On her 21st birthday, she finally boarded a plane and made her dream come true. When she arrived, Paris was even more magical than she had imagined. She stayed in a small hotel in Montmartre, where artists painted in the open air and music floated down the streets. Every morning she would walk to a nearby bakery to buy a fresh croissant and a cup of strong coffee. On her second day, she visited the Eiffel Tower. As she stood underneath it, looking up at the iron masterpiece, she felt a wave of happiness rush over her. She took the elevator to the top and saw the entire city stretch out before her. Golden rooftops, green parks, and the river winding like a ribbon. In the evenings, Lena wandered through the Latin Quarter, listened to street musicians, and sat at outdoor cafes, writing in her journal. She visited the Louvre, where she gazed at the Mona Lisa and masterpieces from centuries past. She even made friends with a kind Parisian woman named Amélie, who showed her hidden spots of the city that tourists often missed. Paris changed Lena. It gave her a sense of wonder, a love for beauty, and a belief that dreams really could come true. As her trip came to an end, she promised herself she would return. Paris wasn't just a place she visited, it had become a part of her heart. On her last night in Paris, Lena decided to take a boat ride along the Seine. The city lights reflected on the water, and famous landmarks like Notre Dame and the Louvre seemed to glow in the dark. It felt like a dream she never wanted to wake up from. As the boat gently moved along the river, Lena thought about everything she had experienced, the art, the people, the food, and the feeling of endless discovery. She realized that Paris had taught her something important. The world was full of beauty, and sometimes all it took was courage to find it. Before she left, Lena bought a small silver necklace shaped like the Eiffel Tower. She promised herself that every time she wore it, she would remember to chase her dreams, no matter where they led. At the airport, as she boarded her plane back home, she smiled. This was not the end of her journey, it was just the beginning. Paris had given her more than memories. It had given her inspiration for a lifetime. Back home, Lena couldn't stop thinking about Paris. Every evening she would sit by her window, open her journal, and reread the notes she had written in the little cafes along the Seine. The memories were alive in her mind, the smell of fresh bread, the sound of distant accordion music, the feeling of the cool Parisian air on her face. Inspired by her trip, Lena decided to study French more seriously. She enrolled in language classes, bought French novels, and even decorated her room with paintings of Paris streets and the Eiffel Tower. Her friends noticed a change in her. She was more confident, more passionate, and full of dreams. Months later, an opportunity came. An international company was looking for someone who spoke French to work in Paris. Without hesitation, Lena applied. She remembered the promise she had made to herself to chase her dreams, no matter where they led. After interviews and paperwork, she received the news she had been hoping for. She was hired. When Lena returned to Paris, it wasn't just as a visitor. This time, it was as someone who belonged there. She found a small apartment in a lively neighborhood close to bakeries and bookstores. Every morning she walked to work, greeting familiar faces along the way. Lena's life in Paris was not always perfect. There were challenges and homesickness, but she embraced every part of it. Each day brought new adventures, and each night she would look out her window at the city lights, feeling grateful for the journey that had begun with a simple dream. Paris was no longer just a place in her heart, it was her home. Once upon a time, in a vast sunny desert, there lived a small stone named Rocky. Rocky was no ordinary stone. He dreamed of seeing the world beyond the desert dunes. Every day he would watch the birds flying high and wish he could move like them. One afternoon, a strong windstorm swept across the desert. Sand whirled in the air, and Rocky felt himself lifted slightly off the ground. The wind pushed him along the desert floor, rolling him over hills and into valleys. Rocky was finally on an adventure. As he traveled, Rocky met many other rocks. Some were large boulders, some were tiny pebbles. Each rock had its own story. A sharp piece of granite told Rocky about the tall mountains where it had once stood proudly. A smooth riverstone spoke of cool waters and fish that swam around it. Day after day, the water smoothed Rocky's rough edges. He became rounder and shinier. He loved hearing the gentle sound of the river and feeling the small waves wash over him. One rainy night, the river rose higher and carried Rocky away. He floated and rolled along the riverbed, passing forests, villages, and bridges. Rocky was thrilled. He was seeing the world just like he had always dreamed. One day, Rocky washed up on the shore near a beautiful village. A little girl named Maya found him while playing by the water. She picked Rocky up and smiled. "You're so smooth and shiny. You're special," she said. Mia decided to keep Rocky As her lucky stone, she painted a tiny heart on him and placed him on her windowsill where he could watch the sunrise every morning. Rocky was happy. He had traveled far, met many friends, and now he had a new home where he could see the world every day. His adventure would continue, not by moving, but by being part of someone's happy life, and Rocky knew that sometimes even small stones could have big journeys. As the seasons changed, Rocky continued to sit proudly on Mia's windowsill. Every morning, he watched the sun rise over the village, casting warm golden light on the world. Mia would tell him her secrets and dreams as though he were her trusted friend. Sometimes she would take him outside to the garden, and he would feel the fresh breeze and hear the birds sing. One day, Mia's family decided to move to a new house, far away from the river and the village. As they packed their things, Mia carefully placed Rocky in her pocket. "You're coming with me, Rocky," she said. "You've been with me through so many days, and I don't want you to be alone." During the long journey, Mia and Rocky passed through hills, forests, and even a beautiful valley filled with flowers. As they arrived at the new house, Rocky saw a breathtaking sight, a grand, towering mountain in the distance. It reminded him of the tall boulders he had heard about from the sharp granite rock in the desert. Mia placed Rocky on a new windowsill, and he could see the mountain clearly. "This is our new home, Rocky," Mia said softly. "I think we'll have more adventures here." Rocky felt proud. He had traveled from the desert to the river, through forests and valleys, and now to a new place filled with promise. He realized that although his journey had started small, it had led him to the most wonderful places. One evening, Mia took him outside and placed him on the ground beneath the big mountain. The sun was setting and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. Rocky felt the breeze and looked up at the mountain. He had been a small stone, but now he understood every journey, no matter how long or short, was important. Each stone, like each person, had its own story to tell. And as the stars began to twinkle above the mountain, Rocky knew that his adventure was far from over. There was always more to see, more to feel, and more stories to be told. Rocky listened carefully, feeling excited. He realized that even though he was small, he could one day become part of something greater. Maybe he would join a mountain or find himself in a rushing river. Finally, after many days of traveling, the wind grew calm. Rocky found himself at the edge of a sparkling river. He was happy. Here he would begin a new chapter of his story, shaped by the flowing water and the adventures yet to come. As Rocky rested by the river, he felt the cool water touch him for the first time. It tickled. The river was full of life. Fish swam by, dragonflies danced above, and colorful plants grew along the banks.